All right, got a new scenario here to explore what would happen if China decided to make a nuclear strike against the United Kingdom. I'd say probably looking at most of the audience for my videos, United Kingdom usually provides the second most people watching by far. And so I'd done a video before about a Russian strike on the UK, so now I'm going to do one about a Chinese strike on the United Kingdom and what would happen. So I'm going to run it twice. One time I'm going to run it as if it is a part of a larger strike from China against the United States, United Kingdom, and other allies. So I'm going to just focus in on what the result would be on the United Kingdom. So I'm going to go here. And this is going to be, I'm going to say, what I consider a more realistic number. Let's just go in here, put 15% of their force, focused 80% on civilian targets. Oops. Let's go. You should see some stuff's already lighting up here. So gonna hit this with a little bit. Let's go a little quicker there. So 15%. So we have some more stuff coming now. Let's go here and see. So right away, the United Kingdom is launching a retaliatory strike. So let's see here. Do we have more coming in? Not yet. So traditionally, China has kept what was considered a minimum deterrence. In the last couple of years, that has changed. I think it's mostly changed, it would seem, due to the posturing of the United States that they were not convinced the United States was concerned about the nuclear capabilities of China. And so they have been increasing. They've increased the number of silos. So their number of actual land based silos now surpasses the United States by all measures of publicly available information. Their actual warhead and missile counts do not. Just because there's a silo doesn't mean there's actual missiles in there. People say, well, what's the point of a silo if there's not missiles? I'd say you're a moron. But for those morons out there that don't have to continuously question stuff, it's for targeting purposes. We won't know which ones have missiles and which don't, so we'd have to target every one of them if we're trying to eliminate their capability to make a strike against us. And so, yes, there is a point to having silos that are not armed. If we don't know which ones are armed or which ones aren't, it's called absorbing our missiles. That would be less missiles we would use to target their cities if we're having to put them into their silos. Or a couple nitwits also say, well, why would we why would we bother even trying to? Because we would just hit cities. And I'm like, oh yeah, so what? You're part of the National Security Council. You're part of whatever. I'm not. I present several scenarios, and I'm upfront that only a select few people that truly know what the different targeting plans for the United States and other countries are. But again, these scenarios explore different possibilities. See here, um, 2.9 million casualties, basically 3 million for United Kingdom. China, 2.5. Population wise, clearly, it's a far greater percentage of the population of the United Kingdom. Take a quick look at some fallout data. So that's where we're at with that. So I haven't seen that going to run a second scenario now. And so I'm going to reset things, and they're going to see what it's going to be like if the Chinese decided to basically make an all-out strike against the United Kingdom with their nuclear forces circa about 2 years ago. So give me 1 second. All right, so let's see here. Turn on AI for a few of the countries. Target country. So I'm going to change this slider 100%. And we're going to click on that. And then we're going to have a little fun. Far more count of warheads is going to come in. So follow-on strikes. So United Kingdom is wanting to launch an retaliatory all-out strike, but looks like most of their forces have been neutralized. In this particular scenario, their subs were in port. Let's just see what happened here. So China went all in. Casualties jumping up to 8.3 million. Looks like they did get some because China's shown just must not have seen it when I was zoomed in. Close to 1 million casualties themselves. There's going to be, due to fallout and stuff, Spain is going to suffer some, and likewise on the Chinese side, you have Russia, some assets for the United Kingdom. Again, that's going to be a pretty large percentage of the British population, not to mention infrastructure damage and everything else that's going to be impacted. So, UK being an island nation, much less landmass than China, less ability to absorb those strikes without a higher number of civilian casualties, and the Chinese arsenal is greater. It was slightly greater than what would be the French arsenal, but now they've well surpassed that with their increase and are continuing to increase their nuclear forces. It's a sign that they're changing their posture. They've committed to a no first strike policy for some time, but yeah, okay. So they violate that policy. I could say whatever. I could say, yeah, I'm not going to speed, and then go out and drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway. Oops, guess I did it. If you're going to use nuclear weapons, you're obviously escalating past a point of societal norms. Clearly, saying there's going to be no first use, I take that kind of with a grain of salt. Now, having said that, in the modern world, even some of the more saber-rattling leaders have been wise enough to avoid continuous escalation with nuclear armed powers. You've seen in the Ukraine conflict, Russia could be targeting supply chains of European and United States supplies going to Ukraine. They've went out of their way to not target those things. Clearly, they do not want to escalate the situation to involve the United States and potentially other nuclear armed nations. And in the same token, we're going out of our way to not escalate with the Russians. Why? because it's a big risk to take and nobody wants to go down that route. I'm reminded of one of those battle plans from the Cold War that was released, and I know a lot of people try to take this as some sort of gospel for what different Soviet doctrine and plans are. Believe me, the United States and NATO had several plans of their own, but it was a 7 days to the Rhine. Even in that planning, which people seem to forget, was based on a response to a NATO nuclear strike on Poland, first strike, that the response by the Soviet Union was nuclear strikes, but only on NATO countries that did not have nuclear forces of their own. So they were not doing nuclear strikes against France, Britain, or the United States. In fact, in Britain, they were launching conventional missiles where nuclear missiles would have been far better, less usage, far more effective, but they were purposely planning on conventional. Does that mean they wouldn't have done that? No, of course not. It's one scenario. There's likely tons that were pushed out there. Of course, it was released by a country no longer under the sphere of influence of Russia. It was politically timed, of course, and I have no doubt they had scenarios where they did. In fact, I want to say there was another scenario that had been released not too long ago about how many tactical nuclear weapons they were going to use against Sweden or whatever country. I mean, a Scandinavian country or Finland, one of the two. Can't remember off the top of my head. And of course, they planned to use them. We had several plans ourselves. We're not putting Pershing missiles in Germany because we weren't envisioning a plan that we weren't going to light the hell out of Moscow with them. They were there for a reason, right? And part of it's a deterrence, but part of it is having that capability if we wanted to. Thankfully, wiser heads prevailed and continue to prevail. And even you see with some of the rhetoric between the United States and China, which seems to be one of the closest touching off points you can think of between two modern great powers. Even lately, they've had some pullback. The meeting with Biden and Xi. They've had some pullback on some of the rhetoric, wanting to slow down the saber rattling a little bit. Look, it's useful. Our military-industrial complex needs some of that. And I'm sure on the Chinese side, you need an enemy. Listen to Orwell. There's got to be an enemy. There's always going to be an enemy. I remember back in the late 80s and early 90s, Japan was going to overtake the United States economically. And, as the Cold War started to wind down, next thing you know, and you have those silly movies like Gung Ho with Michael Keaton and everything, and they were going to own all the United States and whatever. And now they can't use that because Japan had, their slowdown and everything. So now it's China, right? And it's going to continue. And inevitably, look, United States, every great power, every, empire has fallen at some point. It's inevitable the same thing will happen in the United States. Does it mean it's going to happen today, tomorrow? No. There's a lot of factors that go in, just like with China. Their population's aging. They're seeing some slowdown on their economic growth. So maybe they don't end up meeting some of the predictions where people are saying they're going to overtake us at this point economically or military or whatever. Maybe they don't. Who knows? Maybe somebody else does. Maybe it's India that finally does. Maybe it's none of us. So, point being, there's always got to be a bad guy threat. So we can keep churning out this stuff. And hopefully the rhetoric doesn't get mixed up. But if it does, oh well, we always talk about how bad nuclear war is, but never talk about the good stuff, Nobody will tell you when to go to bed, You can eat ice cream all day long. You can kill mutants all day and all night, So the winters will be beautiful, multicolored snowflakes. So you got to think of the positive side of things too. Yeah, that's it.